Dr. Malik Boykin, welcome to Shrink Wrap Radio.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk to you. I don't usually do it, but we had a phone call a few days ago, a couple of days ago, and I just got so high off of talking to you and discovering all these intersections in our lives, academic intersections and so on.
Right.
And I really got stoked. And so I'm really happy. And I I had been wondering, well, what's going to be the focus of this interview? And what came to me is somebody who was involved in your staff or whatever reached out to me and said, hey, I listened to one of your podcasts. It was very inspiring. And you got to interview Malik. And I realized, well, that's actually gives us a good direction, is to talk about inspiration. And there's so much heavy stuff going on in the world, and we could spend a lot of time spinning our wheels about that. And but I would really like to focus on inspiration in your life. You're having such an amazing career. Uh, uh, you know, so let's just jump in a broad way and let me say, where have you found your inspiration? We could all use some inspiration at this time in the world. Where have you found inspiration in your life moving through it?
Yeah, and thank you so much for the question and for the great conversation we had the other day. But one of my greatest sources of inspiration ongoing is and has been my father, Wade Boykin, who has, blazed a very similar trail in a lot of ways, where I am the first Black psychology professor in my department at Brown University.
Uh-huh.
My father was the first Black psychology professor at Cornell University.
Yeah.
And much in the ways that what it's like being the first and kind of navigating that contingency. He did it in a tougher time. He was doing
Right.
it in the 1970s. And he has just been so helpful to so many people, has been such a great mentor to so many people. I meet many people along the way who are just like, your father gave me an opportunity to pursue my academics. I didn't even think of myself as a smart person, and your father really authorized me. And from this was I got it from Judy Herrickowicz, who's a full professor at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and has had an illustrious award-winning career. But people of so many types of careers and backgrounds have disclosed to me that my father was their inspiration. And growing up with somebody who's not only inspiring me but inspiring others has just been just a huge thing for me, and is just a big part of why I do what I do.
What was the relationship smooth all the way? Sometimes, being raised by a psychologist can can have its own challenges.
Sure.
And
Yeah, I would say that the relationship was always smooth, but it wasn't always deep. And when I was like a young boy, I was just very curious, very scientifically curious. And my father was a person who I talked to a lot about science,
uh-huh.
but not a lot about feelings and thoughts and, kind of what was going on in my inner world. And it wasn't really until my mother passed away when I was about 13. And watching my father go through that with the amount of grace that he did was also really inspiring. But it was after she transitioned that my father and I really took the time to get close. And
Uh-huh.
he that begat him getting season tickets to the Georgetown Hoyas basketball right around that time. And we would just go to games and sit and talk and go to dinner afterwards, and just spent a lot of FaceTime father son talking. And from that point to now, when people ask my father who his best friends are, it's me and my brother. And for me, it's really the same. We're just very close.
Yeah, what a wonderful thing. And it's interesting how sometimes it's on the heels of tragedy, of the death of your mother, that can trigger a spurt of growth or a change in a relationship like you experienced with your father.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that came out in our conversation on the phone was that your father got his PhD at the University of Michigan, as did I. I
Yeah.
think I graduated 2 years before he did.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is diehard Michigan. He actually was one of the founders of the Black Psychology Students Association that is at Michigan and continues. Sorry, I think Alexa is talking in the background.
Oh,
Hopefully
is that Alexa?
yeah, she's Alexa, be quiet. Sorry. But yeah, he is diehard Michigan. One of the other things that he and I do is that we'll go to bowl games. When Michigan gets into a bowl game,
Oh, yeah.
we'll get up and go. So he is go blue all day.
Uh-huh.
College recruitment, and that's really one of the activities that keeps him going. Yeah, he loves
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we talked about basketball too, and we talked about a common love of the Warriors between
Oh
us.
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that you went to Berkeley for was that a postdoc that you were at Berkeley
It,
for?
it was my PhD. So I
It
started
was
my
your
PhD at
PhD.
Cal in 2013 and finished it in 2018. And I mean, what a great time to be in the Bay Area, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So my father and I had gone to many Wizards games as well. We were Wizards season ticket holders, and so when I got to graduate school at Berkeley, I missed going to the NBA games. So I had, I started going on, the StubHub or whatever, trying to find tickets. Like, let me go see what these Warriors are about, and just went to a game to enjoy it. Then I went to another game to see my Wizards play. And by about the third time I had gone to see the Warriors, I was like, man, these guys are fun to watch,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
threes coming in from all over the place. And I ended up going to 2 more games. And then I remember distinctly, it was fall 2014. I went to go see them play the Orlando Magic. And Victor Oladipo, who's from Hyattsville, Maryland, like I am, was the featured player for the Magic. And Warriors go into that game, 10th game of the season. They're down by 10 points, minute to go. And Curry and Clay, Steph Curry and Clay Thompson hit 4 threes back to back to back to back and win the game
Wow.
I call my dad up. It's like 1 a.m. on the East Coast. I wake him up out of his sleep and I'm like, Dad, I'm just letting you know right now that I just saw the 2014, 2015 NBA champs. Nobody's going to beat this team.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's what
great.
happened. And that's what happened. Right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And interestingly, it's one of my adult sons who turned me and my wife both onto the Warriors later than you got into them earlier than we did by far. We've been watching for maybe 3 or 4 years. I think I've kind of lost track of time, but they are we're talking about inspiration. They are inspirational people.
Oh, yeah.
That team is very inspirational. They seem to be guided by some sort of a spiritual set of values,
Mhm.
and that gets manifested in different ways. And so not only are are they impressive in terms of their athletic skill and what they've been able to achieve, but also in terms of the community that they've created among themselves and the ways that they've reached out to the broader community.
Yeah, they really have. I mean, just there's so many instances of them uh, giving back to the community in various kinds of ways,
Yeah.
and not even just to the Bay Area community, but to the global community. You know, I know that Steph Curry had the thing where he was giving malaria fighting nets and things
Oh,
to
yeah.
people in West Africa who were, trying to dodge malaria and so on and so forth. And so there's just a lot of ways that those guys are just really good guys to root for. And I think that Steve Kerr, as the coach of the team, also just does a lot to elevate the conversation and to bring in psychologists and speakers and people who are thinking about gratitude and inspiration to just keep the spirits high and keep everybody just really connected as a community. It's really infectious and fun to
Yeah,
watch.
he doesn't seem, from what we've seen in, the games and some of the publicity and so on, it doesn't seem like he's on their case in the way that most coaches, would be very critical and on their case. And how come you keep screwing up that shot or whatever? He just seems to give them a lot of space.
Yeah, and I think he has an ethic of fun of let's make sure that the game is enjoyable. Let's
Yeah.
really make sure that we're out here having fun playing basketball as opposed to it being, a source of pain or a source of shame or yelling at each other, things of that nature. Like let's really build up positive energy and support for one another, for each other's development and for each other's games just keeping it fun. And I think that shows. I think it shows in how he coaches from moment to moment.
Mhm.
And it just makes them really easy to root for.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you're the first Black professor in the psychology department at Brown University. And you're also a hip hop artist with you've got a piece out there called Dancing for Freedom
Oh yeah.
that had 2 million downloads on TikTok.
Yeah, 2 million plays on TikTok. So a lot of folks on TikTok have heard the tune and decided to put together skits or dances to it and things of that nature. And many of these videos that people have made with our song have gotten 700,000 views, 50,000 views. And across all of these videos, we've eclipsed 2 million plays on our song,
Wow.
which is,
Send me a link to a couple of the good dance things
oh
because
yeah, I will do.
it's about dancing for freedom. And I was, that got me wondering, well, who's maybe dancing to this stuff.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, so one thing I was wondering is hip hop something that's just come into your life recently, or were you into hip hop before you were an academic? What's the relationship there?
Oh yeah. So I started writing rap lyrics and trying to create my own hip hop songs when I was in elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was I had my first performance um at a nightclub as part of a contest when I was in middle school. I think I was in maybe 8th grade. And I'm like the only young person in a grown-up nightclub performing, in a contest,
Yeah.
trying to win it,
Yeah.
And even then and through high school, my first experiences with going to professional conferences were music conferences. So I would like pay my money and have my little name badge and would be there networking with record execs and folks trying to like say, hey, here's my demo tape. I'm 15.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, hip hop music has been with me for quite some time. As a much younger person, it was one of the ways that I just combated, it was my meditation practice, combating, depression, with the fact that, my mother was ill and then eventually passed, and so on and so forth. And I thought that I was going to be the next, big hip hop star when I was in high school. I thought we were going to make it, right?
Could still happen.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah.
feels like it's starting to happen.
I would say that I never would have thought. I mean, at this moment, Dancing for Freedom is the most successful music endeavor that I've had to this point in my life.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is the precursor to a EP that I'm getting ready to release with 6 more songs, produced by Stefan Alexander, a physics professor with me here at Brown. And we've got some songs that we really believe in. And I was very happy this past spring. I was fortunate enough to take a music business in the digital age course. I moonlighted as a student this spring, and took a course actually at the University of Houston from Matthew Knowles, who has 2 very famous daughters, one named Beyonce and one named Solange.
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. And I got some feedback on some of my music, and he really likes some of the songs that we're gearing up to release in the coming months. So
Yeah.
it feels like it could happen. And at the very least, I have been able to put music out there and see people dance, people across the world, people in Malaysia, people in Australia, people in the UK,
Oh, wonderful.
and in Nigeria, interpretive dancing to my song as the universe is communicating back to me.
Yeah,
Out there. So
talking about inspiration,
mm-hmm.
that feedback loop has got to be wonderfully inspiring.
It really is. It really is. And for Dancing for Freedom as one of my ways to speak back to the many of the protests that were happening last spring in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, it was a way that I could speak about music and dance as protest, and put that out into the world. And one of the TikTok videos, there was a young woman, don't know where in the world she is, but a young Black girl, looks like she may be 14, 15 years old, but she created an interpretive dance about that had a speaking part over it, like, why do people want to kill us because we're Black, to my song.
Yeah. And I want to let our audience know that I'm going to play the song at the end of our show here, so that they get a chance to hear that and know what we're talking about. So don't everybody go tune out and say, what is this basketball and hip hop? I'm going to change channels. Don't change. Don't touch that dial, as they used to say.
Yeah. But seeing that video, I commented on her video, like, this is so awesome, and thank you for doing this. And she wrote, like, I can't believe that the person who created the song is making a comment on my TikTok video. I think I'm gonna cry. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, I'm gonna cry because you made the video,
Yeah, right.
So just those are over and above however much money the music does or doesn't make for me. Just to know that I can inspire people and move people, is just feeds my soul.
The word that's come to mind to me as I watched it again is anthem. That it's an whatever anthem means, which I think means something really powerful and inspiring. And and it's got that quality to me. When we spoke before, I told you, I couldn't understand the words. Can you send me the words? And I can't, I'm older, I'm white, I'm older. I can't really understand the words in a lot of rap and hip hop. And you said, well, just speed up your hearing. And I don't know, that it seemed like maybe that's working, because now that I listen to it before we just got together again. And I
Mm.
could understand it all.
Oh,
I was catching all the words. And so that felt really good. And I also looked up a question that I've had is what's the difference between rap and hip hop? And I went
mm,
online and I got what seemed like a pretty good answer to that. I don't know if it fits for you, but it said that it and it was written by some music artists, right? And who I think had a foot in both worlds, maybe. And the answer seemed to be in part that rap grew out of a particular time and situation, and mainly gang life in Watts and L.A. and maybe a couple other major cities, and that today's rap, they were saying, was not authentic, and that hip hop is more about a lifestyle, and that it's more authentic and it speaks more to what Black experience of today is.
mm.
Care to comment on any of that?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So I certainly I do feel like hip hop is more about a culture for sure, and
Uh-huh.
about a cultural experience that began with Black communities and has emanated globally across the world. I don't think that I necessarily agree with the idea that rap comes out of gang life. Um, but I think this is also one of those things where if you ask 15 different people what the definition or what the difference between the two are, you'll get 15 different definitions, right? But I think of rap as the actual act of of rapping, whereas hip hop has more to it, where it describes um, a visual art that's associated with
Uh-huh.
hip hop, and like graffiti, and even Basquiat would describe himself as a part of the hip hop culture, or would have described himself as part of hip hop culture before he died an untimely death. But there's also dance that goes along with it, and just a political kind of awareness that goes along with hip hop. Whereas rap is just rapping. It's like the act of just,
Yeah.
rhyming words and so
Yeah.
on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Now there is,
that all fits with what I was reading too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now there is gangster rap, and gangster rap certainly is tied to both a gang experience and a political orientation experience. A lot of times that there is a level of what even gang means, that is it's also like a um, collective economic structure for people who feel disenfranchised
Yeah.
politically and socially. And so I could totally see then where gangster rap would be tied to that experience. But I would yeah, but yeah, I think that is a gang, and gangsters are words that just, depending on what angle you flash the flashlight on it, they just
Right.
so many different kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was watching, and I don't know if the show's come back or not, a TV series called, and I don't know whether to pronounce it as the Chai or the Chi,
Oh,
on
the Shy.
the Shy.
Yeah.
Okay. About Chicago,
Oh
about
yeah.
life in a Black neighborhood in Chicago. And
Sure.
I, th- I, th- I don't know what your reaction is. I think that's just wonderfully well done, with
Hmm.
lots of insight into the ups and downs and the different sort of subcultural political things going on in the
Mhm.
Black community and the South Side community in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time on the south side of Chicago, and my mother is actually from Gary, Indiana, which is pretty nearby to the south side of Chicago. It's actually where the Jackson 5 is from, um,
And
and
Michelle Obama.
Yeah, Michelle Obama's from the South Side of Chicago,
Uh,
and yeah, no, totally. And I think the show is authentic to what is there, and I think that many of the people who are involved with the show and the production of the show are themselves Chicagoans who are really pouring their experience into the writing and into the production.
yeah,
So yeah, I think it's brilliantly done.
yeah. It's a Showtime production for listeners and viewers out there if you want to look for it. Um, so I'm wondering what the impact on you might have been in terms of inspiration of Hamilton, Lin Manuel Miranda. That's got to be in there somewhere.
Yeah, that is this is such a complicated question, and this will probably be the first time I'm really talking about this
Oh, good.
anywhere in public. But I actually saw Hamilton a couple of times, and I loved it. Yeah, I saw a Chicago production, ironically, and I also saw it on Broadway, and I, and this is also on the heels of I saw In the Heights, like Lin-Manuel Miranda's first musical
Yeah,
that he put out. I loved them both, and I think from a infusion of hip hop into the story of the founding of America and kind of the songwriting and the costume and the production, phenomenal. I
yeah,
love that part of it, but I also find that there is a critique by Ishmael Reed that I'm also really sympathetic to, which is just a lot about the erasure of uh, the experience of enslaved Black people and or the experience of indigenous peoples who were killed and displaced and whose stories are just not a part of this, and for whom
uh,
many of the people that are lionized and heroized in Hamilton are the real villains of their lives, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
huh,
so there's a way that like on the surface from the entertainment value, Hamilton is phenomenal. But in terms of its historical value, there's just a very painful erasure that's also a part of it, that it just really complicates the way that I feel about the production. But is it brilliant, ingenious? Absolutely.
yeah. I
Is
appreciate your sharing that because I had not seen that aspect of it, but it's obvious once you say it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, no. So it just it makes it tough. But are there songs from the Hamilton soundtrack that I know by heart because they're such beautiful songs?
Huh?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it was also, I think, just a wonderful mix of racial cooperation,
Yep.
uh, and bringing an awareness to a wider audience of there's something very positive in it all,
Mhm.
in addition to the missing story that you say, but it's kind of updating the relationship of Black artists to a wider culture, uh,
Yeah.
underscoring it beautifully.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it definitely brought the beauty of hip hop to audiences that might not have been sympathetic to the beauty of hip hop, right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and there were many allusions, in the lyrics, that to hip hop artists that I love and listen to. There's a Mobb Deep reference, the great rap group from Queensbridge, New York, of Prodigy and Havoc, where they're like, I'm only 19, but my mind is old, and that reference is in there, or with the 10 dual commandments being a reference to a Biggie Smalls song,
Huh.
and these kind of layers and allusions
Yes,
to
layers.
classic hip hop. Yeah, I really love that part of it. And I also applaud Lin-Manuel Miranda because he had a adjacent kind of traveling museum that was in many of the cities that
Ah,
played, where he told the deeper untold histories of the erasure and so on and so forth, so that people can see the places that he took poetic license, and also see the complications in the
yeah,
lives of these people, where Jefferson and Washington and these people were slave owners, and this is engaged with much more deeply in this museum. And so I think, so I applaud Lin-Manuel Miranda for doing that, and for, using the platform to further teach the history.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Another thing that we talked about on the phone is, to shift it ground a little bit, was the Oprah series
Mm,
on Apple Plus,
mm,
in which she's dialoguing with Prince Harry.
mm,
And it's a series. It's not just, I think originally it seemed like there was a one-off interview, but this is a series that they're doing together on, uh, in some ways, I would say, the universality of trauma
mhm,
and the different ways that it manifests itself around the world. They both very openly share their personal stories, and I learned things about them that I didn't know before, that really warmed me up to their whole project, because they both are very, very open in talking about very raw places in their own lives.
mhm,
And so I wanted to get that out there, just so all my listeners, I want to say, if you can find any way of finding this show, one of the limitations of it, I think, is that it's on Apple Plus, which I don't think is going to reach as wide an audience as it should,
mm,
because it is a great psychological, psychotherapeutic, educational experience that's just done in such both slick, from a technological film kind of point of view, uh, with such mastery, but then the underlying messages and all are important. And I wanted to highlight two for the purposes of our conversation here. Um, One is in Zimbabwe, that you mentioned, West Africa.
mhm,
And in Zimbabwe, there are, just horrible, I don't want to get the stories mixed up in my mind here, great poverty, you know.
mm, mm,
They don't have the resources to have a structure of psychotherapists who people can go visit in the city or something like that. And yet they're suffering from all sorts of trauma there. And so what they came up with, some of the professionals who, are trying to look at these global problems, is more of a community approach that's got more outreach. And so what they're using in that approach are grandmothers,
mm,
and they create a grandmother bench. So instead of going to a therapist's office somewhere, you if you want to have a conversation with the grandmother, and the grandmothers have had a little orientation, I would assume, some kind of overall mental health uh, uh, lecture or two, but
mhm,
their grandmothers are just going to be themselves and have a conversation, that they're part of the community, they're known by everybody, and sure enough, you see people come over to the grandmother bench and start pouring out their heart eventually, and grandmother kind of listens really well, but also gives advice. We're, as therapists in this culture, we're taught not to give any advice,
mm,
but sometimes people need advice. They need good advice coming from a wise person who's gone down this road before. So I was impressed by that. And then another segment, speaking of the Warriors, coming back to them, that the NBA, I don't think it was the Warriors, but the NBA management realized, after I think there have been some suicides in the NBA, and they highlight a young guy who's an NBA player who was suicidal, and he was, you know, he was really going to do it. and they realized we have to be more proactive here. And they hired a Black therapist who I suspect maybe has a master's in social work. I'm just guessing, but seems to be, you know, you can tell he knows he's got some deep background, but also, again, the approach is because of the traditional suspicion and hostility and understandable distrust, um, that he's just going to hang out with them and have conversations. And so that's his positioning there. Somebody's going to be hanging out with us, going on the tour buses, etc., and always around in the locker room and so on, and is available for conversations. And so you see guys begin to accept him and kind of open up, and he's not pushing anything. And so for me, one of the questions that it speaks to is the traditional thing in psychotherapy has been, when the question comes up, well, can a straight person be a therapist for a gay person? Can a white person be a therapist for a Black person? And the answer has always been kind of, certainly, if they do a good job, all people are the same, and same dynamic should be there. I'm questioning that in a way that I didn't question it before, because I see these powerful examples, and I'm sure there are exceptions and all, but I'm thinking, well, maybe it does make sense that Black people have a Black therapist. Maybe not in every case, but maybe in certain situations, and gays and transsexuals, and go right down the line of all the sort of people who are on the fringes. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
So there's a lot there, and I think that when you going back a couple of steps, I think that having therapy be or interventions of any kind be culturally flexible and adaptive to the context is just vastly important, right?
Yeah.
So as connected in the way that there's this council of grandmothers in Zimbabwe, down in like Southeast Africa, that people have trust to talk to elders in that are that they may see as more understanding of their culture,
Right.
or people may be more willing to disclose to someone who it just seems like they're a friend that's hanging around. And if this friend that's hanging around has skills, and I can see them in a number of different contexts, that I may trust them enough to share my secrets, share my fears, and share my pains, right? And so meeting the people where they are and designing some kind of intervention that really makes sense to them, I think is vastly important. There was a book that I read called "The Spirit Catches You When You Fall Down," about a Hmong family, a Hmong Chinese family who had a daughter who was dealing with epilepsy, and just the way that they understood that culturally really clashed with the American, hospital and kind of institution around healthcare in ways that was really detrimental for them. And
Yeah.
so just because you want to bring the care, if the care is not couched in a way that people can receive it or understand it, then there's going to be a real disconnect.
Right.
And such is true with therapy, such is true with other kinds of interventions. But as it relates to whether or not then the person delivering the therapy needs to have a very specific demographic similarity as the person who's receiving the therapy, I don't necessarily think that's true. That they have to be able to connect. And a person who may need a therapy to speak to a specific aspect of their identity, it might not be their racial identity, or it might not be their sexual identity, and it could be a shared identity that another person has. Let's say, you know, for me specifically, if I were to, you know, go down this road, I would want somebody who maybe has experience with very close loss, and that could be many kinds of people, right?
Mhm.
And or you know, even if a person shares my racial identity, we may not share the same meaning for what our racial identity means to us, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I have met people, you know, I'm one of my favorite people to talk to during my time in my master's degree at Teachers College was a friend of mine who was from a minority group, ethnic minority group in Egypt, whose experience as being an ethnic minority, who did not experience herself as a Black person, um, but her experiences navigating that world to me just sounds so familiar to my
Mhm.
experiences. And so, you know, as long as you can connect and empathize and understand and speak to the experience that a person needs to have spoken to, then I really think that across group difference, um, you know, self-disclosure and healing will
Yeah.
really happen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love the nuance way of your thinking. I can often go just jump on an idea and run with it. But what you say really makes sense. So one of the things that you mentioned, I think, early in our conversation was that hip hop had been therapeutic for you.
Oh yeah.
Uh, uh, Talk about that. How was it therapeutic? How is it therapeutic? How might it be more therapeutic?
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. You know, on the heels of a buddy of mine, Ian Levy, just releasing a book on hip hop and spoken word as therapy in counseling psychology. The fact that he's building a body of scholarship around this
Mm.
that speaks so deeply to me and so deeply to so many of my friends is, I think, it's just so important, and it's just an under theorized dimension of hip hop. And I was having a good conversation with my buddy. He raps under the name Dimes, who was telling me that, man, you know, it was around the time that I was um, accepting my position here at Brown University. He was kind of, you know, they had offered me the position. I was thinking about whether or not to take it or not. And he we're having a deep conversation about hip hop, and he said, "Man, I rap. I have to do it because it just helps me with my sanity. Like it just helps me keep my mind together." And it just resonated so deeply with me. It resonated so deeply with so many lyrics that I've heard in hip hop music, like
Yeah.
the mental health story embedded in hip hop. If you listen to enough of it, people will, the artists will tell you, like, I do this to fight depression. I do this to, you know, keep my mind together. And in my childhood, it was my meditative practice as dealing with, you know, with my mom's illness. And you know, I write in a song that's on the upcoming EP, a song called "Hip Hop Found Me," that I'm looking forward to people getting to hear. But you know, there's a line where I say that I've never been a gang star, but Guru and Primo got me through some tough days with my mama's chemo, right? And you know, I say hip hop was there for me. It was my art therapy long before Starks almost blew up in the Cherokee, right? Like it's art therapy for me. Hearing rhythms and beats and painting those beats with words and channeling my emotions into words and communicating them and really wrestling with them and thinking about how I think and feel about them
Yeah.
uh, for, you know, a sustained number of hours. You know,
Yeah.
I come out on the other side of that just feeling calm, feeling peace, and feeling like I really worked through something and also channeled whatever I was feeling into producing something that's constructive.
Oh, I
And
can believe that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is, I think it is a powerful tool. I think that there are now then also programs where people are trying to harness the power of this tool as a therapeutic intervention. And, you know, I'm just very happy to see this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That puts me in mind of, I'm trying to think what just flitted through my mind. Oh, poetry slams are very close, right?
Mhm.
I think a close ally that almost feels like they're, a lot of the poetry is really sort of rapping at these
Mhm.
poetry slams.
Mhm.
And you can see that people are working stuff out, and that they get applause, you know, they're putting their problems out there and just being really open with it, and they get that applause, and it helps give them support. And
Mhm.
then I'm thinking of a guy that I interviewed some years back, African American guy by the name of Kwame Scruggs
Mhm.
in I forget which, in Ohio. What's the big city in Ohio? He's at one of the, in the,
Cleveland,
yeah, probably Cleveland, something like that. And,
Columbus.
and so he's working with black youth there. I can't remember if it was mostly boys or if it was both genders, but he got Jungian training here in California. Got very interested in the whole Jungian perspective, and so uses stories, stories and myths, and has kids all drumming. They're in a circle and they're drumming, and he's developed a powerful program, you know, that's brought many people through who would have fallen through the cracks, motivating them and getting them interested in academics and so on. So there are so many modalities available to us these days, and I think are going along with what you're saying. I mean, there's a uh, in the profession, in the psychology profession, there's more and more emphasis on inclusivity and cultural awareness, and, you know, specific trainings and licensure trainings and so on that are designed to address those issues.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, do you have a sense of a mission? Uh, you know, what's the role of spirituality and mission in what you're doing?
Yeah, I feel like my missions are multiple, and one of the missions that I have is to demonstrate to people that you don't necessarily have to choose between, you know, your day job and your art. That these things can really coexist if you make space for them to coexist, and if
Yeah,
you are willing to you know, take the chance of having a complex identity in that way, right? So I
yeah,
meet a lot of people that say, man, I just didn't know that it was possible for you to be a professor and a hip hop artist, or
yeah,
you know, yeah, and you know, there's a student who in who's actually working with us in our lab. Our lab has a transnational component. So this is a young man who just graduated with his bachelor's degree in computer science in Nigeria, who is working to test some code for us. And he's like, I sing and play the piano, and I just didn't know that you could be a professor and an artist. I didn't
yeah,
know, but
yeah,
you know, I'm a computer scientist and an artist, you know,
yeah,
and just was really thankful that for my role modeling of this. So that is part of the mission. I really want to give people the you know, opportunity to authorize themselves to be scholar and artist, to be
yeah,
scientist and artist uh,
yeah,
in this kind of way. I think that's just important and undervalued. And certainly I've had people ask me whether or not I was taking a risk, or whether or not people would take me seriously as a scholar, given the
hmm,
fact that I also do this other thing. And I'm just like, you know, to some level, I don't necessarily care, right? Like, like this is, it's me, like, you
yeah,
know. This is who I am. This is what I want to be in the world. This is my humanity. So if I need to be unidimensional to be taken seriously, then I feel like that's a problem with the person who's defining me in that way, as opposed
Right.
to being positive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
So,
that's, yeah.
so we haven't touched actually on on that academic side of your life. What the world is that lab about? What's going on in the lab?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I run a pretty diverse lab where we are studying a lot of things, where our main focus in this moment is studying algorithmic bias, the fact that
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of decision algorithms of varying types are ones that work better for one group than they work for another group in society, all the way from things like the faucet being more likely to detect a hand if that hand is white than if that hand is a hand with black skin. Um,
Oh wow.
all the way up to algorithms that decide whether or not people should be granted a home loan or an auto loan.
Yeah.
Audits of these algorithms have demonstrated that they work differently for people, for minorities, that they don't work quite as well. Or bail granting algorithms are having higher false positive rates, and denying bail to people who otherwise would have not been high risk, or defined as such if they were.
Yeah.
So we have developed a series of software platforms that help to really get at what people think about algorithmic bias, and if we're going to correct algorithmic bias by one of the statistical definitions of fairness, either equalizing the accuracy of the algorithm or equalizing the false positive rate of the algorithm across groups, which of these is seen as more fair, since these two definitions are mutually exclusive? I know that's a lot of words.
No, fascinating. I'm really on board with what you're saying because uh, it's something I've been tracking. In my interviews. I I was at one point I was going to be an engineer, so I've got this whole I've got different parts too, and so the engineering and all. So I'm very interested in artificial intelligence, and have begun to be aware of the shadow side of artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, our whole society is being led charging down this road, and it's invading, it's facilitating and invading our lives in ways that we're becoming more aware of, but there's so much more that we need to be aware of. And that's right at the interface where you're working right now.
Yeah, totally. And with that, I mean, we have several of the students in the lab are computer scientists. I'm running this lab in conjunction with a computer science professor at University of Rhode Island, a woman named Sarah Brown, who studies algorithmic bias from a computer science computational modeling standpoint. But one of the kind of issues that the computer scientists have is that many of the things that they want to know about this stuff is what people think about it. And they don't have really a skill set to study people and do the social scientists
Yeah.
work to extract, people's ideas about this out
Yeah.
of people. So we have really used the CS principle, the computer science principles and principles of psychology measurement to design software that works at the intersection of this, as well as to write tutorials to explain the problem of algorithmic bias to people, to teach data literacy, so that we can also then get informed opinions from people about what they think about algorithmic bias. And so that's been a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last year. And actually just this weekend, I got a message last night from Julia Ryan, one of my lab managers, that our survey design is ready to go. And so we're going to be collecting data over this weekend, some preliminary data about how about how our software performs,
Yeah.
and ahead of a preliminary talk I'm going to be giving about this software at Columbia University next week. Yep.
Wow, very exciting. And it's good to see your energy flowing in both directions. I mean,
Yeah.
the enthusiasm that you have in your life that you get from what you're doing artistically. And I can feel that also in the lab and your vision for the lab and the presentations and all of that. So you're feeling like a whole person.
I really am. Yeah, I really am. If I somehow make $1 million from the music, I'm going to keep my position because the opportunity to do the science that I get to do is priceless. And I love contributing to this conversation. And I feel like the group of people that I've assembled to help me do this work is just a very special group. And I love working with them.
Well, this is maybe a good place for us to close because I know you've probably got other things you need to run off and be doing. So Dr. Malik Boykin, AKA Malik Starx. Where does the Starx come from? Starx.
Yeah, so my full name is Curtis Malik Starx Boykin. And Starks is on my birth certificate as Starks.
Okay.
Is my family name from my mother's side of the family.
Uh-huh.
So I use my middle names, my two middle names, Malik and Starks, as my stage name.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so
that's great.
yeah.
And
And
some places it says Starks Malik. I've seen it both ways. Malik Starks and Starks Malik.
Yeah, totally. I'm Starks Malik on Instagram, only because I think I lost the password to the original Malik Starks. But I own them both, but I only have the password to one of them. So folks who want to reach out to me on Instagram, it's StarxMalik. I will respond to you. I'm very responsive on that platform. MalikStarx.com gets you to all my stuff. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Apple Music. I'm on Bandcamp. I'm on any place you want to hear the tunes. Check it out. And www.boykinlab.com is where you can read about more of the science work that we're doing.
Okay. Well, Malik, I have enjoyed speaking with you so much and really appreciate your being a guest today on Shrink Rap Radio.
I am so thankful to be a part of this platform. Thank you so much for sharing the platform with me and having a conversation with me.